Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to dig into some important sources and pull out the key insights for you. And today, we're looking at something pretty significant. Newly uncovered documents, diary excerpts, actually from the legal advisor to the government, Baharav-Miara, our goal. To give you a shortcut, really, to understanding what these pages tell us about her actions in 2024. It's quite a revealing look behind.
And that look is so important. I mean, the public's ability to actually check what people in power are doing, it really depends on having access to reliable information. This diary, it gives us a rare glimpse, doesn't it, into how things operate at that high government level. And as we'll see, it brings up some really critical stuff about transparency, about accountability.
Okay, so let's jump right into the first big revelation here. Because it's a bit of a bombshell, I think. It changes how we might see a major public case. The diary details a meeting between the legal advisor and the prosecutor general, Tomer Yerushalmi. And here's the thing, the timing. It was the very night before arrests were made in that Tzida Teiman case. You know, the one with all the controversy around detentions and misconduct allegations.
Yeah, and what's really striking, I think, is that up until now, most of the focus, public focus, media focus on Tzida Teiman. It's been on Prosecutor General. People were looking at him for, various perceived failures or things missed in the case. But this diary entry, it flips that script a bit. This pre-arrest meeting puts the legal advisor right there at the start of this whole contentious thing.
Right at the beginning.
Exactly. So it opens up these huge new questions like, did she actually approve the investigation, the arrests that followed?
Yeah.
And maybe even more critically, was she involved? Or did she at least know about that leaked video? The one the source calls fabricated and says defamed Israel globally.
Wow.
These aren't just small details. They totally reframe who might be accountable for what happened with Tzida Teiman.
Those are definitely explosive questions. So the diary doesn't give the answers, but just knowing the meeting happened, what does that suggest about her role, her influence? It feels like it points to a much closer involvement than we maybe thought before, right?
Absolutely. The fact it's even documented, that meeting, suggests, a potentially deeper connection. Maybe her authority, or at least her awareness, went right down to the operational decisions, not just overarching policy. Mm-hmm. It really broadens the scope of who might hold responsibility in a big way.
Okay, fascinating. Let's shift gears a bit, because the diary also reveals something else that was, surprising to me. The sheer amount of time and focus the legal advisor apparently spent on communication and media, it seems like a central part of her work. We're talking, according to these notes, no less than 30 meetings just on communication topics in the first 10 months of 2024.
30, yeah.
And get this, 14 of those meetings were specifically with journalists.
And this is where things get, let's say, complicated or contradictory, perhaps, because here's someone who publicly talks a lot about transparency.
Right.
Yeah, the diary makes it very clear she strongly refused, that's the quote, strongly refused to say which journalists she met with. The names were hidden.
So intense engagement, but behind closed doors, essentially.
Exactly. So the big question this raises is, what does that tell us? This pattern of lots of media interaction, but keeping it so opaque. What's the thinking there? Is there a perfectly innocent reason she wouldn't name names? Or does the source material push us towards thinking it was about, hiding something or controlling the narrative?
That's a really sharp contrast, isn't it, between the talk of transparency and the secrecy in practice. And it's interesting, too, because this level of engagement with the press didn't seem to stop her from, going after media figures sometimes, ordering that investigation into Ovid Glickman from Channel 13 for alleged assault, and apparently others, too.
Right.
It paints a picture of a very specific kind of relationship with the media. Close, maybe, but very, very controlled.
That's a good way to put it. Controlled. The insight seems to be that she had this proactive media strategy, maybe more about managing how things looked, managing the story, rather than just open information. And refusing to name the journalists, it suggests she understood the power involved, right? Granting access selectively, but keeping the actual interactions under wraps.
Okay, speaking of managing things and operational philosophy, the diary brings up another really compelling point, one that touches on potential ethical issue, a possible conflict of interest.
Ah, yes.
It says that an attorney, Ben Call, handled a case involving the legal advisor's son, a theft case, despite what looks like a clear conflict of interest. The diary even adds this little detail that Ben Call knew how to reach the right people in the family.
And the seriousness of that kind of conflict, it's huge, especially for someone in her position, the top legal advisor for the government. The core insight here, I think, is that this hints at a direct ethical compromise where personal connections might have influenced or seemed to influence the highest legal office.
Which obviously isn't good for public trust.
Not at all. It undermines the impartiality she's supposed to embody. And just to add another layer, this same attorney, Ben Call, also represented Baharav-Miara herself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in that separate case involving Nadav Argaman and the Pegasus software issue. So it just deepens the connection between this attorney and her own activities.
So, okay, let's unpack that for a second. It suggests these connections, personal and professional, might have gotten pretty tangled up. For you listening, it kind of makes you think about the broader picture, doesn't it? These interwoven relationships at the very top. What does that mean for boundaries, for ethical standards in such a high office?
It certainly paints a complex picture.
Yeah. And beyond these specific cases, the diary also gives us a window into the wider world of government dynamic. Meetings with political figures. For example, it records a meeting she had with Yoav Gallant, who was defense minister at the time.
Okay.
And this meeting happened just one day before she held discussions about setting up a state commission of inquiry. The source calls it a national level inquiry.
Right. And if we look at the bigger picture there, the context is important. Gallant, at that time, was actually facing dismissal proceeding within his own party, Likud.
Ah, right. I remember that.
Yeah, for supposedly acting against the party line. So the timing of that meeting with the legal advisor, just before this big inquiry discussion, it makes you wonder, was that meeting part of his activities against Likud's positions, like the source seems to suggest?
That's a fascinating question.
The timing hints, perhaps, at some kind of coordination or maybe alignment between the legal advisor and Gallant on this major inquiry, potentially even challenging the government's own internal politics.
That timing certainly raises eyebrows, and the diary notes another interesting interaction, too. A discussion the legal advisor held about the authorities of the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir.
Okay.
But here's the thing. This discussion happened 6 months after a court verdict had already been given on his authorities.
6 months after.
Yeah. And the source explicitly claims this discussion was apparently to curtail Ben-Gvir's actions, part of what it calls incessant confrontations between the two of them.
Well, that really highlights the tensions, doesn't it, between different parts of the government. The key thing there seems to be that even after a court ruling, her office might have still been actively working to define or maybe push back against Ben-Gvir's ministerial powers.
Like an ongoing power struggle.
Exactly. It just shows that constant push and pull going on at the highest level. The struggle for influence, for authority.
And just to give a sense of the breadth here, the diary doesn't just mention these figures, it also lists meetings with other really high-ranking people. Senior folks from the judicial system, a former Supreme Court president, another former legal advisor, plus a whole list of ministers and Knesset members, people like Yariv Levin, Gafni, Yoav Kish. It shows she was interacting right across the political and legal map, a very wide scope.
A very central position, clearly.
So quite a deep dive we've taken today into these diary excerpts from the legal advisor, Baharav-Miara. We've seen insights from that really sensitive pre-arrest meeting in the Tzida Teiman case, potentially broadening who's accountable there, to her extensive but quite hidden interactions with the media, suggesting maybe a very controlled approach to information.
Yeah, and the documented conflicts of interest, pointing to potential ethical issues.
And these high-level political meetings that really reveal those intense dynamics, those power struggles within the government.
And as we wrap up, I think it's just crucial to circle back to why this matters. The public's ability to actually scrutinize government, to trust it, to hold it accountable, it really depends on transparency. It depends on getting access to credible information you can verify. These diaries, even with whatever redactions there might be, they're a powerful reminder of just how vital these kinds of insights are.
So considering everything we've talked about, this deep dive certainly leaves us with some things to think about. What new questions does it spark about that tricky balance, high-level government advice and the apps for public? And what does it mean for all of us navigating such complex and sometimes dynamics themselves?